Welcome to IO Nintendo, a podcast dedicated to talking about everything Nintendo, at least the fun stuff anyways. I will be your host today, and today we have our first guest on the show, OJ, aka PlayerEssence.
What is up, Blandrew? I am so happy to be here for your podcast. I'm looking forward to talking all sorts of stuff, man, and I enjoyed the first episode, so I had to try to see if I can get on this podcast myself.
Yeah, it was a little off the cuff thing. Like we've never really done anything like that before, but a lot of people seem to like it. But there's still things that we feel that we can improve on to make the show even better for people listening. But it's an honor to have you here. I mean, you're one of my favorite Nintendo YouTubers. I've been watching you since like the Furious Francis days, the PlayerEssence.com days, which is you with a laptop on your lap talking about Nintendo news when everybody was down on Nintendo. That was just a nice one of the few channels I was watching at the time to just actually listen to like a diehard Nintendo fan speak passionately about Nintendo. So it's an honor to have you here.
Yeah, man, it's been a crazy journey from back then, especially since now I've kind of even evolved the content into kind of expanding into like all of RPGs and also Nintendo stuff at this point. But not a lot of channels survived from back then. I mean, like
no. Most of them. No, I think they got just either tired from it or they just felt like they weren't going anywhere, so they just quit from doing it.
Yeah.
I kind of started in that era, but I was also in college at the time, so trying to micromanage 6 classes as well as doing YouTube was kind of rough, but my output was still way better than what I'm doing right now. So I'm trying to get back to that, flow of releases, but I got a job now and other responsibilities, so it's just way harder for me to get content out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't even imagine trying to do like YouTube like while in college. I mean, I played football too, so like playing football, then also doing classwork and all that, and then me doing my teammates' classwork for money as well. I mean, it would have been impossible for me to do YouTube.
Wait. How much were you getting paid for doing your teammates' homework?
It depends what class, like how long it took me, but I'd usually charge around $15 to $20 an hour. But you gotta remember, this is a decade plus ago, and they would pay me. So
I don't know. I feel like you're kind of underselling yourself at $15 to $20 for some homework.
This was a long time ago, so at that point, I mean, look, $15 to $20 at that in college. Hey man, it was great. It was great at that point. I was like, hey, this is extra money for me.
Yeah, $15 to $20 was like what, $70 back in the day. I'm just trying to justify you doing it for $20, OJ.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't hard. It was easy. But usually I just charge like a flat rate. Just give me $20, give me $15. I'll take care of your math homework for you, or I'll take care of I'll research a few different things for you. But if it was a paper though, I'd charge more for a paper, like a whole paper. Yeah.
And the thing about those like math questions, most of those answers were just like online. Like there was just an online virtual bank that they pulled from and put it like online or in a textbook. So you could just literally Google out the equation, and then Google would just autofill in the rest of it because it already knew what you were trying to look up. So.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that was there back when I was in college. Because I was in college like 20 years ago, but yeah.
Okay. But speaking of like, our beginnings and everything, what my co-host wanted to ask a couple questions, like kind of a behind the YouTuber segment to get to know the YouTuber and see what got them into YouTube, what got them here, how they started gaming and things of that such. So question 1, what did get you into YouTube?
YouTube, I just kind of stumbled and fell into it, because at the time that YouTube was just starting, like it seemed like a pretty cool website. You were able to watch people play video games, and some people would put up really bad footage back in like 2007 and 2008. So I just kind of saw it and I was like, oh, this looks cool. And I never expected to make any money. I never expected there was no YouTuber, like there was none of that back then. It was just, you just did it because it was fun. So I think it was right after college I started experimenting with just like really bad videos, like on my first channel, just putting together footage and all that, because I'd always been interested in like video, production and stuff like that. I'd always been interested in that type of stuff, and talking about video games. So I just started putting together some, like I said, really bad videos. So I just kind of stumbled into it. And then later I was like, hey, this seems like, I started seeing other people, do like become YouTubers. So I was like, hey, maybe I can. And then like, I didn't do so well at the beginning, but then I think it was like 2017. That's when I really started doing a bit better. But
Well,
yeah,
like,
I just kind of saw it and I was like, this looks cool. But like I said, I never intended to set out to be one or anything at first.
yeah. But like we were saying earlier, like a lot of our peers kind of fell off during that time. What was it that kept you going, like doing YouTube, even though you weren't seeing like the most success and anything like that? Was this just something to pass the time? Was it just a little side hobby or something?
Yeah, I always just enjoyed doing YouTube. So, I mean, when I first started doing YouTube in 2010, like, yeah, I never expected to make anything or anything like that. And I really didn't really make much. It wasn't until a bit later. But what kept me going was just the fact that I just liked talking about video games. I just liked creating content. I thought it was pretty cool. And yeah, and then of course when the Switch came out, I was like, yo, this is like the perfect opportunity to, like to revitalize and like to potentially like be excited about, Nintendo gaming again, because since everybody was down. So, since the Wii U and all that. And even though the 3DS was great, but it was hard because not everybody had like 3DS capture cards and stuff, so you couldn't really create the type of content that you wanted to create on 3DS because I never got a 3DS capture card. So
I spent like $600 a couple months back for like a region-free 3DS with a capture card. But you're right, like if you wanted to capture 3DS, you were kind of just aiming. You were going like back in the day YouTube where people were just aiming a camera awkwardly at their TV and it was off position and everything, and you were looking at this faded picture on the screen. But the 3DS, I remember there was like a certain, only a handful of people had like access to legitimate 3DS content. It was like Game Explain and maybe somebody else, but that was about it.
yeah, there wasn't a lot out there. So, it was cool though. It was cool to see the 3DS content, but it was just tough. I never bought one of those. It was tough for me to even be able to afford one of those back then at the time. And then by the time that I really could, it was like they were already moving on to Switch. So I was like, eh.
Okay. A second question: what is it that got you into gaming in the first place?
I remember just my brother, because I have an older brother, and I remember like in the 80s, there was a game. It was called Bugs Bunny's Crazy Castle, and I liked Bugs Bunny. So
Is this some type of Jaguar exclusive that only you have ever heard of, or like?
What, Bugs Bunny's Crazy Castle?
Yeah, I've never heard of this game
No,
before.
it's an NES game.
Okay.
And it's like you're inside this castle, and like all of the different Yosemite Sam and Daffy, they're all trying to like kill you essentially.
Okay.
And you have to try to maneuver your way out of this crazy castle. But at the end, I guess it was all just they're just playing around with them once you beat the game. I forgot exactly what it was, but anyway, Bugs Bunny's Crazy Castle. I saw my brother playing it when I was really little, and I was like, yeah, that looks cool. My brother always played video games. Like we were in that era where we were in the arcade era, kind of. We would go play arcade games. But then, like, those were super cool, like pinball. We'd play regular arcade games, Space Invaders, and all that. But then, when the NES came out, my dad got us in the NES, and it was all like from that point, we're like, oh snap, we got Mario, we got Bugs Bunny, we got all these different games, and that's what kind of got me really into gaming.
Okay. And that's the thing about I actually kind of liked a lot of those little licensed games back in the day. Like we all grew up with like a handful of those licensed games. Like I had the SpongeBob game on the PS1, the Super Sponge. It was a little 2D platformer. Played that a lot when I was growing up, but I mainly started on the it was like the Sega Genesis and the Super Nintendo. My cousins had the Genesis and then we had the Super Nintendo, so we were just constantly going back and forth, and then more and more we just started getting all the new systems, the Nintendo 64, PS1, PS2, GameCube, and ever since then I've just been loving gaming, PlayStation and Nintendo. So kind of falling off PlayStation just a little bit, just because their identity has kind of changed over the years, but Nintendo, I'm still 100% about that.
Yeah, when I was younger, I mean, people see me as just like hardcore Nintendo fan, but to be honest, man, I played everything. I really do like all the different games out there. Like, for example, like Sega Genesis, I thought that was like the coolest thing ever. Back then, I wasn't like, oh, screw Sega, even though that was like the heart, that was like the real birth of like the modern age console wars, Sega Genesis versus Super Nintendo, and I didn't care. People would sit there and say, I'm like, dude, look, Sonic is cool. I think this game is dope. Like the Aladdin game on the Sega Genesis was cool. Like there was a bunch of like Vector Man. There was a bunch of really, really cool games. So I didn't care. And PS1 came out and it was like smoking N64. I was like, dude, I want to play. Like my friend used to go to Greece every summer, and his parents wouldn't let him take his PlayStation, obviously. So he used to let me borrow it. So I would be sitting there playing Gran Turismo. I'd be playing Street Fighter Alpha. I wanted to play. I couldn't afford the games back then, but I wanted to play, man. I was playing all that. And then as soon as I could actually start affording, other systems, I started like, so that was like in the sixth generation, PS2, Xbox, and GameCube. That's when I was able to work and get my own money. And I bought a PS2, I bought an Xbox. I bought all the games for that 360, PS3. So yeah, ever since I could actually make my own money and start buying all the systems, I did, man.
Yeah, the first console I bought with my money was was actually the Wii U, November 18th, 2012. I remember that was the last thing I bought at Toys R Us. And then,
nice, Toys R Us.
Because like at that time leading up to the Wii U, every place was sold out. Like you could not find the thing. So I had to settle with a $300 basic edition and a copy of New Super Mario Bros. U. But I had a blast on it, and then the Wii U Pro controller. So
nice.
I had a good time with it.
Yeah,
but yeah, I actually never really encountered that whole console war thing when I was growing up. Like PS2, GameCube, PS1, N64. Everybody was just kind of doing their own thing, and everybody that I knew just had a PS2 almost exclusively. So I didn't really meet a lot of people that were doing these little back and forths like I always hear about with the Sega Genesis and the Super Nintendo.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
And lastly, how did you get in contact with Nintendo, and do you have any advice for people getting into YouTube?
Do I have any advice for people? Okay, well, let me answer your first question.
Okay.
With Nintendo, I just the funniest thing is that back when I was doing I think when I first, not a little bit after when I first started my website and I was doing a little bit of YouTube, I did just like reach out to them because they have like a content creator thing where you can just like fill it out. If you just Google search like Nintendo content creator, whatever, they have a thing that you can fill out. And I remember filling that out and sending it to them. And I asked for a copy of Hyrule Warriors on the Wii U to review. And they
this
finally,
is like 2015, right?
Yeah,
2014.
Yeah, 2014. And I remember they got back to me, and it was so funny because they were like, they're like, all right, we'll get you a copy of the game, but it's a rental. You're gonna have to like sign this letter that you'll give it back. And they shipped me a copy of the game, signed the letter, I sent it back to them, and then I played it and then reviewed it, and then I sent the copy right back to them. I think I had to pay for the shipping back to them too.
Oh yeah. Was this Nintendo's ambassador program, or was this a completely different?
This was before their ambassador program. Okay. This was just them just being that. I think this was the niceness out of their heart because I was such a small channel at that point, but they saw like maybe a little bit of potential or something. So I think this was just somebody at the office that was like, let's just help this guy out. He's been bugging us, for a while. So that's like my first review copy or anything from them. And I think it was 2016 when I started to establish myself a little bit more. I think I hit 10,000 subscribers at that point, and then that's when I did like another, I reapplied, and then they accepted me from that point on. After I reapplied, when I had 10,000 subscribers. And then once I actually started creating content and doing like a bit better, and then once the Switch came out, that's when everybody's channel started doing a lot better. Mm-hmm. So
I missed the Switch wave, dude. I was too late for it.
Yeah, it's all good. You'll get on this next one with the next Switch coming. But once that happened, and then like they had like a new ambassador program, and I signed up for that, and then that's kind of how I got in from there.
Okay, but they like fly you to events and stuff as well, right? And
they don't fly us.
Okay.
They don't fly us to any events. They don't give us any money. You're allowed to say whatever you want. You can do whatever you want. I mean, for me, it was just they give me all it is. They give me digital copies of games at the launch. At launch, not beforehand, but at launch. And sometimes there are events. And they'll just say, hey, like you got to pay for your stuff or whatever. Like there was an event, like a Luigi's Mansion event that I couldn't go to, but like, Miss Click was there and like Endakuba was there and a bunch of other people were there. And there was like one time they invited me to go play Fire Emblem, Three Houses at the Los Angeles office.
Cool.
Yeah. So I got to go play that early and got to cover the game early. So there are some things like that. But I mean, ever since like COVID, they really haven't done too many events and stuff like that. But I mean, there's going to be events in the future probably. And they also do send some stuff, like sometimes like, they sent me like a controller, they sent me like plushies, sometimes like little gift boxes. Like I got like a little Atlas gift box from them, with the game and stuff like that. So sometimes they'll team up with other stuff and send some things here and there. But outside of that, it's pretty much it.
Okay. Because I'm trying to get to that level. I saw that you guys got these little E3 jackets with your names embroidered on them.
That was cool.
I know you guys got all these cool little things. So I'm trying to work my way up to becoming, not to be like, egotistical, but I want to be like one of the faces of Nintendo, like a channel you can just come to enjoy Nintendo content without any of the nonsense involved with it. So that's one of my goals of this year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if I was to give a little bit of advice, I would just say be consistent. That'd probably be like the biggest thing is be consistent. And, outside of that, just make sure that you're doing content right. At least like, once a week or so, you've got something up. And yeah, I don't know what the subscriber count thing is. I mean, things have changed so much from back then, but I know back then it was like 10,000 subscribers at least minimum.
That's not too bad.
Yeah.
Okay. My co-host, Zach, just showed up. Zach, you there?
Yep. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, you sound great. How you doing?
Fantastic. Doing well. How you guys doing today?
Doing pretty good. Just doing a little behind the YouTuber segment with PlayerEssence right now. Did you have anything you wanted to ask him? So far, I asked him, how did he get into YouTube? How did he get into gaming? And how he got in contact with Nintendo and any advice he has for people wanting to start out in YouTube.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, OJ, it's great that you made it. I've followed your stuff since the early NX days, so it's really cool to be here and pop in and talk with you. Because I had similar questions with Blandrew on that, but I guess if I were to ask you about Nintendo specific things, what would be your favorite thing right now about modern Nintendo, and possibly things that you'd like to see changed, either with kind of the direction of their business practices or like marketing or whatever, or possibly with the next system?
Yeah, right now I'm just I like the frequent releases. The fact that pretty much every year there's always at least 4 to 5 big games that come out that at least I'm interested in. So that's the cool thing. Right now, like Fire Emblem Engage, I've been playing that game like crazy. Really good games. So that's all good. Stuff like Xenoblade, like Fire Emblem and Xenoblade getting the love that they deserve. Like that's been one of like my favorite things. Because I felt that maybe RPGs were a little bit neglected on the Wii U. When it comes to like business stuff and all that, or marketing, I don't really have any issues with marketing. Nintendo sells more games than pretty much any other company in terms of first party games, so their marketing's working. Whatever they're doing, it's working. In terms of business practices with certain stuff, I mean, yeah, there's always things that they can do to improve, like the Nintendo Switch Online. I know that's been like a point of contention for a lot of people, in terms of adding more games more frequently, or potentially getting new systems on there like GameCube, stuff like that. So that would be cool if they were to improve that. Online play just in general. I know that they have the new MPLN servers and stuff like that, but of course, accelerating that, getting that to be better, that'd also be something that I'd say would be points of improvement, especially heading into the next system.
Yeah, absolutely. And going off, I guess, on marketing, because I liked your guest spot on the Xenoblade 3 preview.
Oh,
and and so it was always nice to go to your channel like early on in those days and see someone really kind of pushing for that JRPG angle. And so it was cool that you were eventually able to actually get to the point where you could offer your own kind of experience with that. What was that process like? I mean, I heard a bit when you were talking about the ambassador program or being associated with them, but when you are asked to do like a guest spot on that or provide your feedback, what's that process kind of like?
It's very interesting because sometimes I feel like a little bit nervous, because I'm like, I don't want to mess up, but they make it feel like really comfortable. Like whenever I do any type of event with Nintendo, because like I've done some stuff like Splatoon, like where I play against the Treehouse or stuff like that. They're cool. Like they're gamers just like us. So after I get over like the initial like kind of giddiness, it's just fun. It's fun to be able to have that type of thing. So for me, they just email me and say, hey, you want to, we're doing this for this game. You want to be a part of it? And I'm like, yeah, sure. That's pretty much how it goes down. Just a simple email. I think even like when I played like Monster Hunter Rise, like with the, with the Nintendo Minute crew back when they were still doing that, like that was fun, so So yeah, it's just pretty much starts off with an email like, "Hey, you want to do this?" And I'm like, "Yep, sure."
Absolutely. I mean, that's really astounding that you've been able to kind of take, I guess, because most of your channel is like news focused, and then you provide like your reviews, and you've always been really a really outspoken critic, which I really appreciate. You're always very honest about how you approach either the hardware or software. You had mentioned Nintendo Minute. Are you still in contact with Kit and Krista? Do you guys, I guess, because they've changed trajectory now, so and Nintendo's sort of marketing has shifted a bit. Do you think that the future of Nintendo creating content is more sort of independent, or do you think Nintendo would still be open to maybe doing something like Nintendo Minute in the future? I mean, it's hard to predict, but just from
Yeah.
a little bit of your experience.
Yeah, I think that they'd still be open to, to doing that. Maybe if they find somebody else that can actually get it done. Kid and Krista are awesome. They're always open to do content with any other content creators out there. I know that they're going to be like on Nintendo Prime's podcast. I think I've talked to Krista a couple times about like how to set up certain things. I remember she asked, like, before, she was asking me about a few different things in terms of stuff like that. So yeah, they're cool. They're awesome. I've seen them on other people's podcasts and stuff. So absolutely, I'm still in contact. They're great people. Kid and Krista are awesome.
Yeah, no, that's really rad. I'm Blandrew. Did you have anything else, or?
No, that's all I have for you. Thank you for your answers, OJ.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
Okay, before we get into the main topic of discussion, Fire Emblem Engage, fantastic game. We got a rumor earlier this week that Metroid Dread is a sequel to Metroid Dread is in development from the person that leaked or had insider information on the original Metroid Dread. Now, naturally, this is a game that was just gonna happen sometime eventually. Metroid Dread is already the best-selling Metroid game in like a year, I believe.
It's only 6 months.
Oh, wow, even better. So in like 6 months, and Mercury Steam is allegedly still supposed to be the developer behind this sequel. OJ, how much validity do you think this has?
Well, apparently the person leaked the same person, because I covered this, leaked Dread. So he got Dread right. So he's the same person. It's a Spanish content creator or Spanish person. So Mercury Steam, obviously Spain. So it lines up all there. It would make sense that Mercury Steam would be working on something new. They made way more money that they've ever made in their life ever on like Metroid. Like, this was the most they've ever made, because most of those copies were at full price, and there was a special edition as well. So they just made a ton of money off of it. So, and it's a 2D, it's 3D game. Obviously the game's rendered 3D and all, it's 3D, but 2D in terms of perspective and kind of how you're doing things. So it's not like they spent like a super AAA budget on that type of game, but yet they made, AAA type of money. So I would definitely expect there to be another Metroid 2D game coming, but they said 2025, so I wouldn't expect it anytime like soon.
Okay. What about you, Zach?
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Just to kind of echo what OJ said, Mercury Steam kind of struggled a bit early on. I know that they had took their a stab at the Castlevania series and worked with Konami, and it didn't really click with the audience. Lords of Shadow 2 and what was it, Mirror of Fate or Mirror of, I can't remember exactly the 3DS title. But I would say that the Samus Returns remake was excellent for what it was. I think the limitations and the criticisms of that game are more about the core mechanics of that game, but I thought it was an excellent reimagining and remake of that title. And Dread was my number 2 game of the year on release. And so, like OJ said, it would be foolish of them not to take advantage of this opportunity while like people are still hungry for Prime. And so I think there's a lot of different ideas that they can finally kind of branch out with this series and borrow heavily from maybe some entries like Metroid Prime Hunters or even Metroid Prime 3 in terms of level design that can be really interesting and finally do something that's wholly their own. I mean, Dread is their own, but it would be really a chance to shine away from maybe like what the core I guess series was for the past like 30 years now.
Okay. And they did say like 2025 or something in this report. But that brings me to the next question, because Zach and I were talking about this last week about predicting Nintendo's, like what Nintendo's roadmap is looking like. We firmly believe that the Nintendo, like this is going to be the swan song of the Switch kind of this year. Like, yeah, we'll still be getting games here and there next year, but for the most part, this will be like the last major push, and then we'll start to ease into the next generation in 2024. So do you believe that Metroid Dread 2 would still come out for the Switch, or do you think that's a next generation title?
It's hard to say because I don't know Nintendo's strategy, what they're going to do. This is probably, out of all of Nintendo's systems, usually like at this point, it's like they're hitting the abort button. You know, they're like, get me out of here. Like they're all, something's bad's happening. Like nobody's buying the Wii anymore. And obviously the Wii U flopped or whatever, 3DS sales have tanked or went down, you know. So this is the first time in the history, in modern history at least, that it's like, no, they can just kind of ease into this next, you know, get games ready and not have to worry about the sales and stuff. Everything's doing okay. So they might want to do a cross-gen strategy. They might want to. I don't know if they have the capacity to get that done. I mean, they might, but they might do it. They might do a cross-gen because they always usually do like one game cross-gen. It's usually like right at the launch or near the launch, like Twilight Princess or Breath of the Wild. So this could be like another strategy for them where they just say, hey, let's just do a few cross-gen games. So this could be a Metroid Dread sequel or just a new Metroid game, and they could have it cross-gen. But I don't know their strategy with that and what they're going to do going from this system to the next.
Yeah, because the common, you know, thought process seems to be that Metroid Prime 4 is going to be that cross-generation. All right, here's the last major game for the Switch. We're moving on to the next generation with Metroid Prime 4, but Metroid Prime 4 is also coming with all the bells and whistles to the next generation Nintendo console. But we have also started to see that our competitors like Xbox and PlayStation have also been leaning more into this. All right, we still got the PS5, but let's not stop development on the PS4 and the Xbox One because of, you know, chip shortages. Maybe we're not entirely confident that everybody's going to make that transition as early, so we don't want to miss out on potential sales, even though, you know, PS5 games like Miles Morales and Horizon are selling way better than their PS4 counterparts. But maybe Nintendo's looking at that as well and being like, all right, maybe we should just hold out just a little bit, not for the major titles like a 3D Mario or a Zelda, whatever they got planned for that after Tears of the Kingdom, but we'll just have some of the smaller titles just hold out on the Switch too. But we'll have the next Monolith Soft medieval IP or something exclusively for that next generation, and so forth and so on.
Yeah, I just said one thing to ask OJ on is, I mean, if you remember probably when they shadow dropped Samus Returns, that was kind of looked not favorably by most of the community because they wanted it on Switch and not 3DS. Do you think because of a lot of the conversation online right now being so kind of hostile to the Switch, I mean, it doesn't reflect the mainstream public. The console's selling better than ever, and it's going to continue so. And I mean, I don't know if it will reach and beat PS2, but it could. It's possible. Do you think that releasing sort of another 2D Metroid in a similar time frame, would that be worth Nintendo's time? Do you think it might meet the same criticisms, or do you think the Switch community has changed and there's enough people now where it's not as like dissonant between that handheld and console market?
Yeah, I think the problem like with 3DS, right? 3DS, if you look at the technology, yes, people are complaining about Switch and, you know, the graphics and stuff like that, but if you compare it, it's not as bad. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's not as bad in terms of how 3DS games were in 2017 compared to how games are now at this point in 2023 or 2024. Like, you can still pick up Super Mario Odyssey and be like, man, this game looks great, right? Like, even if that game was to come out next year or the year after, people would be like, oh, this game still looks good. Whereas 3DS was already, even like at that point in 2017, I felt that people were just like, look at this. I mean, it was like, what was the screen resolution? I mean, it was like...
Was it 240p?
Yeah, 240p. So it wasn't even in HD at all. We had already had HD for a number of years, all the way back to like 2005 or whatever with the Xbox 360. So I think that while there still will be people that are, you know, upset that it's not on the next one or whatever the case is, I think that the impact wouldn't be as bad, considering people just like the Switch way more than people like the 3DS, you know? So that there's also that. But I also feel that, you know, the next system also would be backwards compatible as well. So since it's backwards compatible, people wouldn't have a problem being able to play it on there. Maybe there'd be some natural upscaling or things like that. If the Wii U, or sorry, not the Wii U, sorry, if the Switch could play 3DS games, I think maybe people wouldn't quite have been that upset. They'd be like, oh, well, at least I can play it on my Switch, you know? But it's the fact that it was you just can't play it on there, can't play it on your TV. You know, that was the issue for many people.
Yeah, I remember that because it was Metroid, it was Luigi's Mansion, and a lot of people were mad that they locked that to the 3DS instead of bringing it over to like making an actual HD port of that for the Switch. But unlike the 3DS, the Switch sales are still doing very well for newer releases. The 3DS at that time, we had Strange Journey, Ever Oasis, Kirby Epic's Yarn port, a bunch of ports and newer games that were coming out. Hey Pikmin, and a lot of those games didn't really see success. I think we even lost the Mario and Luigi developers behind a game because it just sold so poorly on the 3DS. So I think the situation from 2017 with the 3DS compared to 2023 with the Switch and even beyond that is a completely different story because people are still buying games and in record numbers as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Mm-hmm. Sorry.
Okay, and the last rumor that we had for the week was Baten Kaitos is allegedly coming to the Nintendo Switch this summer by Monolith Soft. Apparently, I don't know if this is true, OJ, but does Nintendo partially own Baten Kaitos?
They apparently the second game, the Origins game, they have some type of publishing rights to it. So it's a little bit complex, but it's between, if anything was to get done with this game, they would need all three. You would need, well, you don't necessarily need Monolith Soft. You can get anybody to do it, but you would need Bandai Namco and you need Nintendo. That'd be the only way that something like this would happen. So,
okay. And how realistic do we think this rumor is?
It's, I don't know. Can I give it a score? Like maybe 10
yeah, sure. Out of 10, what do you think the chances of this being real are?
I'd give it like a 5 or a 6. Like it's possible.
Straight down the middle.
Yeah, it's possible, but you just never know. Baten Kaitos, it wasn't one of those. I mean, the first game did well enough to get a prequel, but the second game didn't do so well because it was so late in the life of the GameCube, you know? So I don't know. I mean, I'd like it though, man. I would really like it. That'd be super cool. Baten Kaitos is one of those really, really interesting card-based RPGs. Really, still one of the better ones out there if you go back and play it on the GameCube. So it would be cool, but I'm not 100% sure.
No, because this is one of the games I always point to. Like BG, he was freaking out about Marvel's Midnight Suns because it wasn't Marvel XCOM, and I'm like, no, you can do a card-based RPG like Mega Man Battle Network or Baten Kaitos and still be like a really good game. So that was a fun game that I played back in the day. But I don't think it's... I'm gonna give this rumor a 7 out of 10 because it doesn't seem too unlikely, and especially with the IP that Bandai Namco has brought back over the past couple years from Pac-Man World, Klonoa of all things, thank God for that, but Klonoa, Katamari, the Reroll series. I don't think Baten Kaitos is too out of the cards for coming back this summer. And it's, you know, it's also Nintendo, they do fund obscure games every now and again, like Bayonetta and Astral Chain, so I don't think it's too impossible for it to come back, but I would love to see it.
Yeah, especially if if they're watching or tracking the sales from these other companies that are doing these releases. I mean, Square's been, I think, you know, I don't know if they're hemorrhaging money or if they're having issues with some of their development, but I think these ports and these remasters have probably been helping them and doing good enough numbers that they see a profitable business model with it. So I think, you know, what you were saying on our first episode, Blandrew, it falls in line with that, going back to that GameCube era. This is the perfect time if they're going to do it, because the demographic for the market is the perfect time for it. People in their late 20s would have some familiarity with it, and it would be a good time since RPGs are doing really well in this system. So yeah, I'm like probably in between you guys, like a 6 or 7, where if Monolith Soft wants to do something smaller, I think a collection would be great. And I've tried out the first one, but I've never played them through, so it would be a great opportunity for that, and I would love to see it.
You know, I completely forgot I did say that I think this will be a remaster heavy year, so I don't know why the idea of a Baten Kaitos remaster is just so out of the cards for me. But yeah, I could see this happening. But it's kind of like, because Nintendo, they approached for Square Enix for Live Alive as well. So this isn't too, out there of the realms of possibility. But I'm surprised they didn't bring back something like, Golden Sun or something. Games that people have been actually asking for. But I'll take it.
Can I have a hot take from OJ real quick about RPG marketing? Because so there is a lot of discussion online about whether Neo: The World Ends With You would have done better if Nintendo had sole publishing rights. But because it was cross-platform, Nintendo did not advertise it. Square solely did. And then Live Alive, which I get, it's more turn-based. It's more in line with what people think of classic RPGs. But Nintendo, just like Andrew said, went super hard on that game, and it cleared 500,000 in sales.
Yeah.
Do you think that Nintendo touch does make sales? I mean, I know it sounds obvious, but something that is a big kind of niche thing, or excuse me, not big, but a niche thing did considerably well last year for Square. And so that's why I'm a little confused when people were like, well, no, Neo: The World Ends With You wouldn't have done better if it had that same marketing push. It's too niche. And I'm like, I don't know if it gets any more niche than Live Alive, in my opinion.
Yeah. Live Alive, that did very well because that game also had like the history behind it, right? Live Alive, it was like this game was never localized. It was a classic that people only kind of heard about. Maybe you saw it in something. So that also helped the game sell. Plus the whole HD 2D remake thing, the art style. So I think those games kind of sell itself at times. So there is that factor to it. But I think that there is also a factor in what you're saying because the first game, Neo: The World Ends With You, the final remix or whatever, the one that, or what's it called? I think it's on the Switch. I have it, but I don't know the Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Or sorry. Yeah. The World Ends With You. That game. Sorry. That game sold like over 500. That game actually sold decent on this on the Switch. But then the sequel comes out and I don't think it sold as good as the original. So I think there is something to that. If the game was an exclusive and if they hyped it up as it's a Switch thing and it got like the marketing, like it got like the Nintendo Direct style marketing, and if it got all that push that it would have, I think it would have done better. I think it would have, but it's one of those like calculated chances you take, right? You're like, hey, well, look, PS4 has a huge install base, right? Like we could take advantage of that. We can go on there. The first game was also on mobile. It was on DS. It's on Switch. So that was kind of multi-platform too, right? So I think they were looking at it that way. They're like, hey, we can reach more people and this franchise could be bigger. And yeah, everybody who bought the first game on the Switch and bought the first game on the DS, they'll be back for this one. Plus we'll get new people. So I think that's what they're thinking of. But what they didn't factor in was how sometimes a little bit tribal fans can be with certain franchises, especially if there's other games that surround it. And without that push, people just kind of forgot about it. Without that extra, Switch exclusive push, people just said, oh, well.
You know what that seems to kind of be happening too right now? Octopath 2. The way we saw Octopath 1 leading up to release was crazy in compared to Part 2. Do I think Part 2 was going to bomb? Absolutely not. But the way that Nintendo promoted Octopath 1, from having it at their Switch reveal event to just having it every single, like, any chance they had, they just promoted it. I think it even won the MPD when it came out. They were just so happy with the sales and everything. But Octopath 2, the promotion for that seems to be a little bit more quiet in comparison.
Yeah. I think that, it's Octopath 1, once again, it had like kind of like the shock factor of it being like, yo, this is the first HD 2D game. It was at the Nintendo presentation. This one not so much, but I think that it's still going to do well because I think Octopath is such a great, franchise, and it's HD 2D. HD 2D always does pretty good. But to give it like a little comparison, like Bravely Default 2, I mean, that game might not be better than Neo: The World Ends With You, but it sold ridiculously better because of the Switch push, exclusive, blah, 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 whatever. You had people who didn't even play the first game like, well, they're showing it a lot,
It's at the Game Awards, so it must be legit.
Yeah. So, I mean, you had that Switch push, and I don't know if that game deserves to sell way more than Neo, The World Ends With You. I'm not sure if it's that much better because I played and beat both games, and I actually have I have a PS4 copy. I bought the PS4 copy of Neo: The Wildlands with You and the Switch copy. So
Traitor.
What are you doing on this podcast, AJ? Get out of here.
I bought both, so I mean, because I wanted to see the franchise do well. So I'm like, hey, well, if I buy both of them, then it has a chance. But yeah, I think that there's some truth to what you said, man.
Yeah, and I think an interesting factor with Octopath as well was it had that benefit of having the feedback demos for the first title, and I think they did it twice, and Triangle Strategy as well. And you can't really replicate that sort of interaction again with a sequel. So I'm hoping that instead they've just taken to heart what we talked about last week about maybe integrating story a little bit more. I do like these character profiles, but Blandrew and I are a little bit similar, and I know, OJ, you can't avoid spoilers, but Blandrew and I like to kind of stay away a little bit from the marketing, especially if we're super interested in a game. Do you think that has an impact on the way that you approach a title, because your career is kind of tied in with really taking in all that information?
Yeah, being in the know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't watch every single thing. Usually after the first or second trailer, I'm done. I'm done after the first, or I just watch parts of like the next ones. Like, so for example, like Fire Emblem Engage. Yeah, I kind of had to watch a lot of different stuff with that because I was covering it. But then they started doing like these super long Japanese trailers for it, and I was just like, like I was like, I didn't watch all those. Like, I didn't look at every single thing. But it just depends. Like, I know, like certain games I might watch a little bit more if I really don't know if I'm gonna be like into the game or not. Then other games I'll watch a little bit less. But yeah, I usually don't watch everything, especially Square Enix and their stupid final trailers. Don't ever watch those, man.
They show you like the main character getting stabbed or something and just falling on the ground.
If it says final trailer, just avoid it. Avoid it like the plague. They oh my god, their final trailers are terrible. They're good trailers, but they're like, if you've played the games, I'm like, this is terrible. Like Final Fantasy VII Remake. Like, I'm like, what are they doing here?
Oh yeah, like even like Nier, the original Nier, the way they open that game up, they have people dying. They have like dialogue from the end of the game, just like, you killed my father. I'm like, what the? Let me get off the screen and just start the game already.
They legitimately show things from like the end of the game and stuff like that. Like, and I'm like, no, this is not it.
Okay, anything else you wanted to bring up, Zach, before we move over to Fire Emblem Engage and close out the show?
No, I think that this is a perfect time to move on. I'm really interested in your guys' thoughts, so let's get this going. Let's engage.
Okay. Oh yes, engage into some amazing discussion. Fire Emblem Engage. What a game, am I right, fellas?
Sir.
Am I right, fellas?
Yes,
sir.
Nintendo put out an amazing game this past week in Fire Emblem Engage. I'm about 20 hours into it. I just got past that brutal chapter 10 on on hard mode, but I'm having a blast with this game.
That's right where I'm at. I just finished chapter 10. Yeah.
Okay. But that was
that's perfect.
Yeah. You're around the same area too, right, Zach?
Yeah, just last night I cleared chapter 12. So yeah, I'm also playing on hard, but I would like to discuss with you guys. I am playing it on casual, so I'm not playing it with permadeath. So I am interested to see what kind of the difficulty lens or how you guys approach the game with that factor. But yeah, we're all about the same point.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. To me, like, it's redundant with the casual and the time crystal, because like you have the time crystal to where anytime somebody dies, you could just rewind it. So to me, like, I get casual mode for like certain, like Fire Emblem Awakening. I don't think there was a time crystal like where you can rewind it and all that, but I'm not so sure if I understand casual mode when you can rewind, when you have like 10 charges and you can rewind it all the way back. Like, what's the point of casual mode when you can just rewind whatever bad happened? In my opinion, I think they lessen it, but I think that the barrier of entry obviously is good if you just don't want, let's say you don't even want to rewind, you just want to play through the game. So I think that the options there are good too, though. But it's just interesting.
I'm not gonna lie. I lost all my rewinds in chapter 10 because you remember that scene where you get into the hall and he can just snipe you from like miles away.
Yeah, you got to be careful.
Yeah, he kept going for this. The one magic user that you get, the girl with they're like sisters, but one of them has like blonde short hair.
Yeah, Citri or something like that. I forgot what her name is.
I forget. I'm terrible with names, but
Yeah.
it was one of those girls he just kept sniping, and I had to keep reversing the time over and over again until I eventually lost on my time crystal. So I just restarted the whole battle. But
Oh no, man. Yeah.
yeah, but for the most part, it is kind of redundant. I get
Yeah.
your point.
Yeah, for me, I think because I started with the series on the 3DS, but I had tried Shadow Dragon and the GBA titles briefly, but I didn't really have a lot of hands-on time with them. And I played Birthright was my first one, and so I did try it just on hard and casual on that. And then for Awakening, I played that with the permadeath on with the classic mode, and I lost a lot of like the main sort of protagonists beforehand, or like early on, or like kind of midway through the game, and it was just kind of odd to me that like I know it's more realistic, but with a game that's kind of leaning towards like 40-50 hours, and it's kind of crucially built around these sort of relationships, especially with the support conversations. For me, like I'm valuing those support conversations more than I am necessarily kind of having this internal logic of, hey, I want these players to die. I want to restart this in order to save them. I don't have that kind of same attachment. I would rather see all of the additional content, which I think this game in particular does really well comparatively to the 3DS titles. So I guess that's where my logic more so is, but I haven't played Three Houses. I'm kind of wanting to dive into that this year after Engage, a few months after Engage, and play that one with permadeath because I think it fits the story more. But with Engage, I'm not really feeling those kind of stakes. The story doesn't really lean in towards that, and especially with the older ones, they're like max maybe like 25 hours. The original ones building up to the 3DS games, and so I can see where you want to extend out and pad some time, but I see most people who are kind of casually playing Engage, it's still taking them about 50-60 hours. So that's just where I'm at, but I definitely understand what you're referring to with the time crystal, because it does sort of contradict there, but I'm actually not using the time crystal that much, and so I guess that would be my mindset when I'm going into it. But I completely understand why permadeath is so important, but that's why I was interested in hearing what you guys think about that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm playing with permadeath on. I think that I still have, like, when you play with permadeath on, because I've been playing Fire Emblem from the almost near beginning back in the day. There was I would just download ROMs. I didn't know better or not, man. They would just be there. And I'd be like, okay. Yeah. And I go on there and I look at this game. It's in Japanese. I had no idea what it was, but I remember it was the original Fire Emblem. And I remember Genealogy and all that. I remember playing them, and then somebody would die, and I'm like, oh, they're going to come back, right? And they never would.
You mean like Celine Blandrew?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I lost Celine in like chapter 3, or like just super early on, and she was so good too.
Wait a minute, hold up. You're playing the whole game without her?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Cause I think I did like a side.
No,
no. The way she died, she was like, I'm just gonna have to fall back from now. I'll support you in other ways. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'll get her back when I get to the hub world or something. And then I get to like 2 chapters deeper, and I'm like, wait a minute, where did Celine go? I could really use her right now. And then I just don't see her in the lineup anymore. And then it just clicked with me all that, oh yeah, she's.
Oh my!
I can no longer use her anymore, but she's still in the story. So that's kind of what messed me up.
I think that what you just said right now, she's still in the story, so it just kind of messed you up. That's exactly what what you were talking about, man. You're saying that, like, hey, these characters, it doesn't really, like, the story doesn't really lean into the whole permadeath thing. They're around, but they can't fight.
Yeah, well, and that was what surprised me when he said that online, because I had thought that maybe they changed it when you had it on Classic, like they changed the dialogue. But yeah, for all of the main like protagonists, like not ones you meet in Paralog, or some of like the support characters for like King Alfred or Prince Alfred, I guess, and all of these other kind of hierarchies and the monarchies, I would think that they had like plot armor a bit. But yeah, she just says, I'm gonna fall back. And don't sweat it. I'll support you. And then she's gone. And so like that's where I'm at with this game, where I because I had tried it initially on normal, and I was like, yeah, the difficulty's not there. And so then I put it onto hard and started the game over. But but with chapter 10, I did not regret going on casual, because I would have lost every single character, because.
Okay.
Yeah, because that's at that point I had not really grind out any of the skirmish missions at all, and because I thought the level cap was too high, and I thought, okay, it wants me to go back to these regions later on in order to like finance them or up the levels or whatever. But yeah, I would have lost every single character at that point, and so I don't know who had plot armor specifically. I know Alfred is in most of the cutscenes, and then the two brothers from the Mountain Kingdom. But other than that, yeah, I don't see anybody else really in the cutscene. So it's a little odd that they would set up like this fan club people and all of this other stuff, and I know that's what makes you attached to them, but they just kind of pop in and out of the story, and so I don't know who specifically really has presence in this one.
Yeah,
like
and
the other games.
That's what messed me up, because like the way she died compared to the way somebody like Etienne died, she was like, ugh, I wish I could do more, but remember me or something like that, and then she like just fades away. But you know, what's her Selena or something? She just like, yeah, I'm gonna head back to the Somnium right now, but you guys take care of yourselves. I'll be back. And then I'm like, oh, okay. And then she doesn't come back, so now I'm relying on Clan as my magic user, and he's a beast, by the way. But
good.
Yeah. But what do you think overall, OJ, of Fire Emblem Engage? Because this was, I was told this was supposed to be an anniversary title, just an all-star Fire Emblem game. But I think they did an amazing job with this. Not only just with the references from the past games, the combat system, even the story. I'm really engaged with. You see what I did there? Fine.
Did we lose them?
I don't know. What about you, Zach? How do you feel about it? Like just the overall game of it? Maybe he had to go take care of something.
Yeah, no, it's all good. Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think now with chapter 10 and where it's going, I am a lot more invested in the story, and I do think that this is probably the strongest characters in like the new characters in a game.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, sorry about that. It's, for some reason, it seemed like I went away, but then I came back. I don't know what happened. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry to interrupt.
You missed the greatest joke of the year, OJ.
No, I heard the joke.
Oh, okay.
It was good. I was saying, oh, that was great, but you guys didn't hear me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we deliver. We're just delivering the puns and the jokes. That's our goal here. Yeah, so I'm much more invested in the story now. I think that the characters are probably my favorite since Shadows of Valentia. That was, I'd say, of the 3DS trilogy, so to speak. That was my favorite. I know a lot of people were attached to Three Houses, and both of you guys have played that. So, is there, I guess, how, with the removal of these more sim elements and with a more heavy reliance on like the support system, the traditional support system, do you feel like it's lacking something, or is it more focused? And I mean, OJ, you can start, and then Blandrew, you can go. And I know you had some similar feelings.
Compared to previous Fire Emblem games, it's definitely lacking, but the goal of the game wasn't necessarily to be all about the relationships and marriage. I mean, I think that maybe at some point they probably were thinking about it or putting it in there, but maybe that just wasn't the focus for what they wanted to do for this game. So in that respect, it absolutely is, but I do feel that a lot of that was also redirected in terms of the focus of the game and having the emblem rings and some of the content and what they wanted to do there. So I think the focus was more about making it a really cool, campy, old school Fire Emblem, story, with the big baddie and, Fell Dragon, and then you just teaming up with all these characters. But I also think it's also hard to create an anniversary game with all these different characters and make the story coherent and make it make sense like you would like a Three Houses, where it's all unique characters, it's all new characters, it's all tied in. Sometimes they do stuff like that, like with Awakening, they bring back, like the hero King Marth, but he's not around there chilling with you, and not fighting, stuff like that. So I think that it's hard sometimes to create a game like this and have it be coherent and all. It can be seen as lacking a little bit, especially compared to like Three Houses, but I feel like the focus of the game wasn't to be that. Almost kind of like, like Pokemon Legends versus Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, or Pokemon Sword and Shield. That doesn't have multiplayer. There's certain things that doesn't do compared to the other game. but I feel that it's still fine. Like the game does what it needs to do for that game. So I don't feel that this is like the future of Fire Emblem. You know, I think that they might go back to that relationship stuff and all like the marriage and some of the more in-depth, multiple pathways and stuff like that. But I feel for this game and what they were trying to do, like with the emblem rings and as an anniversary game, I think that it's fine for that. But I can definitely see, both sides. But I think that both sides can also exist. I think that it's okay that this game is like that, and Three Houses, which still people are buying, it's okay for people to like that more too.
Yeah, I'm kind of with OJ on this one. Like, there's two different styles to the way, like Engage is more of a traditional one, I guess you could say, that does lean into a little bit of elements from the newer games, the social aspects, but it does a really good job at getting you right back into the story and the combat, as opposed to Three Houses, which, yeah, I mean, you can get back into if I had to compare this, it would kind of be like Shin Megami Tensei versus Persona. Like, they both still have that core SMT gameplay, but the way it goes about getting you into like these situations, whether it's getting into combat or talking to these characters, there's a different focus. Like Persona is more about the relationships you have with these characters, the social aspect, but SMT is more about, just getting back into the combat and having a good time. So overall, I think it's a really good game, but I will say I do enjoy some of the social like the social aspects of games like Fire Emblem Awakening. That was a social aspect as well. Like you could partner up with your party, have a kid and everything in the future. I like stuff like that. It's just the way that Three Houses implemented it, and the way that I enjoy to play games kind of gave me a headache, because I like to do everything in games, see every nook and cranny, and they would have these little moments in the game, like you find like a lost item on the floor or something like that, and the description would be very vague as to who it belonged to. It would be like, this pair of glasses belongs to, somebody that enjoys breathing, and then you have to go running around the whole map trying to find out who it belongs to, and then things like that just really took me out the experience. I'm like, oh my god, I gotta go run up the stairs, run into this room, find out who it belongs to.
Well,
And
no, go ahead. I was just say you give them horse manure. That would be the person.
yeah.
I share your pain with that, man, with Three Houses. Yeah, I think that they did a little bit overboard. Like, I think that the structure of Three Houses and what they did, it's a little bit overboard compared to like Awakening. I think Awakening was a nice blend, and I feel that Engage is kind of like somewhere in that wheelhouse. But Awakening actually had it to where, like, yeah, the relationships were important because you got children that could fight with you. It seems like Three Houses, the relationships were like, yeah, you get the support, they fight better with you and everything, and like there's the relationships, but it's just to see the ending and what happens in those relationships. But there's not really anything outside of that. It wasn't as impactful. So I don't mind if you're not going to do kids, and if you're not going to do all that, then I don't really need to see that, oh man, these two are going out on, and they're married and someday they're going to have kids together. Like that doesn't really matter to me. It's more about the benefits of the supports, which, they fight better together, blah, 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 whatever the case is. So I understand, like I said, for some people, but yeah, Three Houses was just a whole nother thing. Like you said, Blanchard, it was just like, it was a whole nother thing where there's a lot of just like kind of like headache inducing things. You combine that with like the activity points and like the time limits and restrictions, and then it starts getting to the point where you feel like this is like you should be getting paid, like you're clocking into work at times,
There's times I'm playing that game where I thought I was playing it wrong just because I didn't have the relationships I wanted with the people and all stuff like that. And even the way Fire Emblem Awakening handled the social aspects, it was still in a game, like in a very video gamey way. Like you partnered up in combat,
exactly,
and then you got those relationships and went from there. So
yeah,
who'd you mate with in Awakening, by the way? OJ, just curious.
I did everything in that game, so I've pretty much done every single combination.
Okay, I went with the rabbit girl.
Yeah, I've done but it was so long ago, so I can't tell you who what was first and all that. But I mean, I that game got me over my depression, so like,
that's what's up.
So I just did everything that I could do in that game, but that was 2013, so I totally forgot. That game needs a remake one of these days.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think if they, especially if they kind of use more of the streamlining of the gifts, because I think the Somniel is really the culmination of like all of these different hub ideas, like done the best for me personally. and because of just how straightforward it is and how many different options there are. There was often times like when I was in Awakening or in Fate, and I just felt a little lost, similar how you guys felt with Three Houses, where it was just like limited. You could just like feed the creature, or you could do little like play little mini games or go up and talk in the treehouse or whatever it was. And sure, it worked, but it felt limited. And here, I think they've combined a lot of the different food items, like the dining thing and all of that stuff. So I hope that if it does continue, and they do a remake, that they kind of focus it in more on these kind of tight, concise things. And it's also really fun to be able to just kind of go do a skirmish or go do a paralog and then immediately come back to the Somniel. And I know that's how the chapters were divided in the other games, but this feels a lot more like a choice when you're choosing how to do bonds or go
not in Three Houses though.
Not in Three Houses. So
Three Houses you can do skirmishes, but that's on normal or below. If you're on hard or up, you have to spend activity points to do a skirmish, so you cannot repeatedly do them. You're constantly having to advance the time. It's more stressful that way.
Interesting.
You can't grind. Yeah, which makes the game, the hard mode on my first playthrough makes the game far harder than Engage, because Engage you can just do stuff. But that pissed me off because I like being able to grind.
Yeah.
But anything else? Everybody enjoying Engage?
I'm enjoying it so much. I like it a lot. It's definitely going to be in my top games of the year when it's all
for sure
done this year. So yeah, 30 something hours in. I just did a first masterclass promotion, so that was fun. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to just finishing it up and doing all the extra content too.
Who's been your favorite character in your roster so far?
Celine.
Oh my.
I made her a little tribute video on Twitter, so
yeah, with Bone Thugs. Nah, that her and that Celica combination were so good too.
Yeah,
I can't believe I let that happen.
It's a great combination because she has a really high base magic stats, so it's she's really, man, that's rough, Blandrew.
I know, but shout out to Clan. He's been doing an amazing job. I actually gave him one of my master steals.
Yeah. Clan's almost, but he's like the great value version of Celine.
Oh, please.
I mean, great value is still good, Blandrew. It's still good. Like I buy great value all the time, but I mean, you know.
Yeah, you got Cocoa Puffs and then, chocolate boulders or something. So, it still works. It gets the job done.
It gets the job done.
Yeah, but I love Etier. She is an amazing archer. She's been holding it down for me, and I got her with that longbow as well, and she's just taking out people from a distance. Don't matter what class it is either.
Yeah.
And I'll save mine for as a spoiler. So because it happens later on in chapter 11. So I am really excited to see what you guys think about chapter 11, because I'm not gonna say it's like the best stage so far in the game, but it does do an interesting thing with the emblem rings, and I think that is like definitely the standout point. I mean, I know that's the purpose of the game, but the way that it's the amount of combinations that they accounted for and all of the different attack animations, like every character has, it's the same animation, but they had to do a different character model for like each character, and with all of these different combinations. And then I saw, OJ, that you had a video like about how to do all of the different like bond rings and everything along those lines. So there is a really deep metagame in here that I really appreciate.
Yes, I appreciate that too. I think that the mechanics, the UI, the interface, the animations, this is like the best and most fluid that Fire Emblem's ever been in terms of mechanics. Like, it might not be as deep in certain games, but the combinations and the overall depth is just kind of blows away most of the other games. Like, it's what they've built here in terms of the battles is insane. It's very, very, very good.
Not only that, but I think this is a very pretty game to look at. Like, there's times where I'm just like looking up at the sky, looking at the clouds. I'm running around the map, just admiring the grass and how it's flowing through the sky and everything. I think this is a really sharp and vibrant lking game.
Yeah, absolutely. Some areas, obviously, maybe not the best, but a lot of areas look great. Like, great. When you go inside your room, if it's the
Oh yeah,
morning and like how the sunlight kind of beams through and everything, that room looks incredible. Like to me, that's like my favorite place.
I like the cathedral, like when it would zoom into the combat and you would just see like the windows in the hall and the lighting on the floor and everything. I think it, like even the reverb and the echo whenever somebody would get hit, I just thought it sounded and looked really good.
Yes, the critical animation whenever you're engaged is also incredible. We just start like teleporting all over the place and just like,
yeah.
it's just animations are top tier. Gameplay is phenomenal. So I'm thoroughly impressed with Fire Emblem Engage, man.
Yeah.
Yep.
Would you say you have? Oh wait, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just saying one thing that I think would be I hope to see more games do in the future is like going off of like the animation. I know that they had experimented with, you had kind of the pixels and then the different 3D character models, and they were a bit more chibi in the 3DS games, but they really seem to have kind of hit that perfect balance of like 2D backgrounds. They look like painterly, and then you have like the 3D character models, and it's really neat to be able to explore the map after you do the stage. And it's simple, it's very, you know, light, there's not a lot of content there, but it's just something to break it up where you can go around and talk to each one of the party members, find some items, do you know, find some animals to adopt, and it's just a nice little breakup of pace. And I just hope that they kind of continue with that and just experiment with all these different art styles going forward, because like I agree with you guys, it just looks beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, before we end this podcast, still keeping it on the topic of Fire Emblem, there's a rumor that we're supposed to be getting a Genealogy of the Holy Wars remake. I've been hearing about this since like 2016, that it was supposed to be coming to the 3DS after Shadows of Valentia, but I guess they saw that sales were pretty bad for 3DS games after the Switch came out, so maybe potentially they stopped development and made a new version for the Switch. Have you heard anything about this, OJ?
Yeah, like this Genealogy of the Holy, we're talking about that, right? Can we talk? Okay. I've heard about it, you know, this Genealogy of the Holy War stuff. I've heard about it from a couple different, I would say, credible peeps about it. And I think it's going to happen, especially after the last leak that came through about the code names with like Iron 17 and Iron 19, and one of them being Three Houses, the other one being Engage. So there's an Iron 18, which would probably be Genealogy of the Holy War. But if that game does get remade, that would be really incredible. Like if we see that, because that's probably like the precursor to like Awakening. Like that game to me, like if I had to pick, like if there was one game that I had to pick to get remade, like I'd probably like, and they can go all out, like it would be between like Path of Radiance and it would be between Genealogy of the Holy War, because the story in that game, what it does and just how crazy it is, if you put that in modern graphics, I mean, that's going to be impactful. So
yeah, I've heard that's like peak Fire Emblem there.
It's peak. A lot of the ideas, it's old school peak, you know, it's old school peak. Like if you take like Awakening, right? You take like the newer ones and say, wait a minute, what if they injected like some of the newer games into the older games? Well, that's Genealogy of the Holy War. That's where they got the ideas. A lot of the ideas for Awakening was from that game. I mean, it was from lots of games. They took kind of everything, but that game was where they said, okay, well, let's take a look and let's do like some of the, what were our best ideas? And a lot of it came from that game. So to me, that's like old school. Between Path of Radiance and between Genealogy, those are like the two best old school Fire Emblem games. And I know people like the GBA games. Those games are fantastic, but you know, I think that Genealogy would be a remake and modern graphics would be insane, but that'd probably be expensive, and the scope and scale would be interesting to see exactly what art style they went with, how it would look, how it would play. I mean, it would be, because that game's a massive Super Nintendo game, you know? So yeah. It's there's a lot. I don't want to ruin it because I know it's never been localized, but the stuff that happens in that game, it will make some of the stuff that Sigurd says in Engage, like it would make it like hurt a little bit more, you know?
Okay.
Or it'll make you understand a bit more, not hurt, but understand a bit more about what happens, because that game is just like, it's just nuts. Like the stuff that happens in that game and what you can do. Very ambitious, very, very, very ambitious for a Super Nintendo game, you know?
And that's like a pretty dark game,
yes,
from the way you're describing it,
yes,
right?
Yes, very much,
And
very much. So
So sorry, so I have a question with that. I guess with the conversation on Engage, a lot of it has been about the art style. And so if they were to do Genealogy, do you think, I guess, this modern anime approach, or something that I guess some people have issue with, would that hurt that game if it needed to go back to kind of more of that late 80s, 90s style of drawing? Do you think it would need to emulate that, or do you not like have that same kind of hang up?
I don't know. That's the thing that gets me, like, where I'm unsure, like what art style they would go with. I think that like a Three Houses type of style would be just fine, because that game can be pretty dark too. No, it is, depending on it just is.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, just flat out it is. Three Houses can be downright depressing. So I mean, I think it might lean more towards that, but I'm not 100% sure. Like, I don't think it's going to be as vibrant. If they did that, it wouldn't be as vibrant and everything. Because even like Shadows of Valentia was more of a darker tone art style and things like that, even with that game. So I'm guessing that it would not look like Engage, but I mean, it could. I'm just not sure. Or maybe they could even adapt that style into a different way. But I don't know what they do, because that's the thing that I'm like the biggest thing is, because that's like the 90s art, and I don't know, like, you guys ever seen like early 90s anime art? Like, it's just,
I miss it so much, OJ. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, same here.
So adapting that, like, if you go into like the bond rings, like, you can create bond rings for Sigurd's party, his crew, and if you just look at that art is incredible. That early 90s art, man, is so
it's
good.
like grimy. I love
it's
it.
so grimy.
Yeah.
So it's super grimy. So like, it'd be interesting to see exactly how they would adapt them into it. But Sigurd looks great. You know, he looks great for compared to, you know, what he looked like back then. I've never seen Sigurd. That was the first time that I ever even saw Sigurd rendered in 3D and all that. So I was like, oh, okay, that's good enough, you know?
Okay. Any questions you want to ask us, OJ, while you have us?
No, I'm just appreciative of you guys inviting me on, man.
No, I'm just messing with you.
You put me on the spot, dude.
No, you're good. I'm just messing with you. What about you, Zach? Any last thing before we head out?
No, I mean, I just really appreciate you taking the time, OJ. Like, you know, it's really cool that I've been able to like connect with different people whose content I've been watching for years. And like, I got out of gaming for a while and then came back into it like heavy kind of during the Wii U era. And so like, both you and Blanger were content creators that were making content I felt was for like the type of games that I like to play. And so it's just really inspiring that I'm like now kind of, you know, a part of this process. And so I really appreciate you taking the time, let us know your thoughts, and, you know, you're welcome anytime. If there's an RPG or something like that you're not, that nobody else is really playing, more than likely Blanger and I will probably be playing it. And so we would love to hear your thoughts about it in the future. You know, no pressure, but thank you again for taking the time today, man.
No, thank you, man. I've been, like I said, I watched the first podcast and I saw you on here, Zach, man, and you did a great job. You seem very knowledgeable, so I do appreciate that. And thank you to Blanju for having me on once again. It's been an honor to be on here. And yeah, I'd love to come back. You guys want to have me back on for something, Blanju? You guys know where to find me. I'm more than happy to do so. I'm never too big or anything to come on you guys. You know, I'm just one of you guys too, man. I'm just a gamer just like you guys. So no issue at all, man.
I appreciate it a lot, PlayerEssence, for coming through. You have no idea how much like your content inspired me, from the videos on YouTube. I even saw a video or like a picture of you, Spawnwave, and Dreamcast guy at the gym, and you guys were like all buff and everything. I'm like, you know what? I got to get my body in order. So I've been hitting the gym and everything. But I originally wanted to do it for like trolling purposes, you know, 6'2", just being buff, walking into GameStop, being like,
oh wait, if you're 6'2", man, you can fill out nicely getting
and like the people are starting to see results, so that's just making me even wanting to work harder with it. But
oh that's 6'2", you'll be good.
Just and even going. Like with these little streams that you do, like the PlayerEssence Live, where you're just talking with the chat, it could be about anything. You guys could be talking about video games, movies, life. You could be like, hey OJ, you know, I'm having problems filing my taxes. All right, quickly, give me your W-2s. We're going to turbotax.com right now, and I'm gonna get this whole thing situated for you right now. Like, we can talk about anything in those chats. It's like a nice little community just for everybody to get together and have a blast. So
Yeah, absolutely. Like, we just talk about whatever. You know, I know life isn't always just about video games. Sometimes people have other issues. So sometimes we talk about that. A lot of people are like, you know, a little bit self-conscious about their body or self-conscious about certain things. And it's really, you just got to be able to have a good mindset, you know, going forward. So I'm glad that, you know, you're doing that, man. I'm glad that you're doing that and taking care of what you need to take care of. You know, and yeah, because I think that like playing games while being angry in life is not necessarily fun, you know, like you.
No.
It becomes like you start getting more like angry like at certain things that you don't like in games when you're kind of just angry with like with your life at times. That's what I realize. So it's always good to talk about different things, man. So my community and your community as well, man, is
oh
great
yeah,
for
for
that.
sure. But thanks again for coming on, PlayerEssence. I will talk to you guys on the next episode of IO Nintendo. We might take a little break until Nintendo drops some big news or the next Nintendo Direct, which should be happening in February if we're going based off past history. But thanks again, everybody, for listening, and we will catch you next time. Have a good one.